And welcome to the Ruby Tuesday. My name is Ruben, and this is my review for Netflix's original new series called MAID. It comes out Friday morning, so when you're watching this review, it's probably out. There are 10 episodes, an hour apiece. It's quite an interesting one, a lot to talk about here. This is non-spoiler. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in this type of drama, realistic drama take on these sorts of storylines that will emotionally engage you and have your emotions doing that. Let's jump into it. After fleeing an abusive relationship, a young mother finds a job cleaning houses as she fights to provide for her child and build them a better future. So I spent the last few days just watching these 10 episodes, and I have to say, right from the beginning, I was just emotionally engaged with our protagonist. I was on her side. Right at the beginning, you are dropped into this very broken relationship, and it is a series about broken people, about the abusive natures of relationships, how sometimes people that are in abusive relationships will leave them and go back, and there's this jumping forward, how there's a cycle of abuse that usually follows each other. The story follows Alex, our character, who goes into a place of protectiveness, a housing association which is specifically catered for looking after a woman in abusive relationships and protects them there somewhat. So we get to see what that world looks like. We get to see how broken her mother and father relationship is as well with her partner. She's raising a child, and every single episode is it's seriously tense. It's like a thriller, but it isn't a thriller. You are always worried for Alex. You are always worried for her daughter. And so when you get a little bit of relief in the form of life is not continually beating the crap out of her down, like just trying to deal with government standards of how to claim certain help, and how you got to jump through so many hurdles, and there's always these circles where one thing leads from one path, but if you don't have that path already ticked, then you can't get the other thing that you really need. The circle of evil and abuse for people that really need it is often very hard to circumnavigate, and you really get that. It shines a light on that whole system. And so I was very interested to see where this series was going to go. But like I was saying, every single episode is seriously tense, because on one hand you have great shining moments of levity in the form of she's getting something that she's really fought hard to get, and then life will just kick her back in the throat and take her breath away and make everything just awful again. At the same time, you are fighting for her as she fights to find a life for herself and her daughter, to find something worth living for. At times in this series, you wonder how she has the will to get up in the morning and continue on. And seeing other people's stories along the way who has had similar things happen to them, when she's in the shelter and you see some of the other ladies' stories, you can't help but feel for them. It does a really, really good job at shining a light at these sorts of relationships. It also doesn't shy away from where the men had these things come up from. So the families that kind of represent that kind of cycle, like I was talking about earlier, where that stems from, and how broken relationships really sometimes just breed a storm of just things that aren't good for any of the parties. So splitting up is sometimes the better thing to do to create a safe environment for the child, which is really important. It was really interesting that by the time I got to the end of the 10th episode and I got ready to do this review, I had to talk to my wife first to kind of spew up a bunch of emotions that were evoked from this series. Now, without talking to the internet about stuff that I have experienced myself or friends and family, of things that I know, then you probably will have similar stories. If you haven't experienced yourself, you'll probably know of a friend or someone that has had something like this. And so there'll be stuff for you to be able to relate to. And I had to just spew at my wife all the stuff that was coming out because this series had evoked. So even though the protagonist is female, I, as a man in my 40s, was able to relate emotionally in quite a heavy way. I also thought the protagonist here, the actors, were phenomenal in the dialogue that they were given, and the scripting is very tight. So every single line of dialogue serves a purpose, even when it's really emotional, even when it's less than. So you're getting more of those looks and those stares and those anger moments. The emotional engagement is there. Even when the lines are smaller than, rather than huge monologues, it really further helps to develop the story because the actors are doing such a great job. Example, Andie MacDowell plays Alex's mother, and she is this hyper realistic art lady who lives her life larger than, but she is as broken as her daughter because of stuff that has happened in her past. And so you go on a journey and you with her as well as Alex's story, and at times you can't help but hate her, but as the story evolves you can't but help but feel for her. And I think this series does a really good job at shining a light at what the characters have each gone through, even if they're not necessarily the main protagonist. Some of the side characters, you can see what they've gone through. Even the guys that you immediately want to hate and go, those are the worst human beings ever, as the story starts progressing you start seeing where they have come from. And it's so clever at crafting a really realistic take. It feels so real and so tangible that the emotions are there. They fly off the screen into your face and you can't help but feel them. I would suggest maybe not binging this, although every episode I wanted to know where the story was going to go, were they going to be okay, because it so easily wraps you up in this kind of drama that it feels so tangible, so real. But I would say maybe watch it in a few sittings and have something else to stew on that isn't necessarily deep thinking, because maybe you do want what the story is trying to tell you to seep into your mind and allow those emotions to affect you. It depends on how you like to watch series. You just want to be entertained, or do you want it to kind of mess with you a bit, to get you to asking questions, to think deeply, to be affected emotionally? I mean, that's what art is really, depending on what it is. Music, actual paintings, photographs, moving images. If it affects you emotionally, it's engaging and it's doing its job. And I would have to applaud them, saying, yeah, this is one of the best drama series I've ever seen. I think it was so well crafted, so well acted. Editing particularly, there are moments where our character experiences life in a different way because her mind needs to create a world that is something for her to cope in. But it also shows us like the realistic elements of life. Sometimes she has a $20 to survive, and you just see this money going down in the corner of the screen, and it's causing you some real tension, some real stress. I mean, I was stressed a lot watching this series, which is a weird thing to say while you're watching a film. Like an action film, I get that stress at your end of you're on the edge of your seat, like Crank, something high octane. But a drama series like this stressing you out, you'll understand it when you watch it. But I would suggest putting this on your watch list. It's one of Netflix's bought IPs from Warner, and I think this is one you should watch. 5 Nicolas Cages out of 5 for me. I also don't know if I want to see it again, because it was really heavy going at some point. So I hope you've heard my heart. I hope you've heard how I was affected by it. I hope you enjoy it, because there is a lot of enjoyment to be had in the craft, but it's also dark. And if you have suffered abuse recently, maybe this isn't the series for you. Thanks so much for watching, but most of all, until next time, remember, live long and Tuesday.